Jai Prabhuji. We all wish to be free from any limitation or any sort of confining power. Humans always aspire to be free. It goes hand in hand with happiness. When people are oppressed, a strong motivation grows among them to fight for liberty at all costs. We are always testing the limits of how free we can be. Even in societies that embed ideas of liberty into their lifestyle and government systems, it is easy to recognize the incessant tendency to push limits. Every generation is marked with innovations and some level of disobedience to social restraints and taboos of its previous one. There are many types of freedom, from political rights of personal liberty to eradication of private mental and emotional restraints. What we call emancipation or liberty usually refers to the removal of a limiting force, while the word freedom typically refers to self-reliance, the power to make one's own choices. In our last meeting, we discussed different objectives of a human pursuit. The objects of our desires will allegedly alleviate the constant feeling of deficit that we experience, that something that we will obtain will provide for it, or something that we will eliminate will free us. We seek the utmost freedom and ability to arrange for our ultimate happiness. But none of us, from the oppressed to the independent, from the poor and hungry to the wealthy and privileged, get to that sought after a feeling of freedom and satisfaction. The fourth class of human pursuit is moksha, liberation. The Upanishads, the latest portion of the Vedas discussing this topic, they tell us that the human existence is not the pinnacle of the revelation, and it's not a goal by itself. It is an essential stage, though, in the process of the awakening of consciousness between the instinctive level of the animal to that of the divine, of which we are not yet aware. It is the only device for making that crucial leap of realizing our true nature beyond the material plane, a divine nature of pure consciousness. When Prabhuji explains the topic in his book Advaita Vedanta, he refers to the two aspects of liberation. Defined negatively, liberation is the burning of all our karma. Defined positively, it is union with Brahman. Karma is fed by our actions. It is what keeps us in the samsara, the cycle of repeated births and deaths. It is why, after we shed one body, we resume physical existence in a new one. In recent years, especially since social media is prevalent, there has been an increasing number of testimonies indicating that we've been here before, that the soul is going through a cycle of reincarnations. Some people have memories from their past lives. For example, they identify their relatives and they're coming back to live with them again. Several people who had a near-death experience said that they got to meet their loved ones who passed away in the afterlife. Others have memories of places they've never visited or knowledge of something they've never been exposed to earlier in their current life. What we learn from it is that we come back to complete unfinished work and unresolved issues, to pursue desires we did not come to satisfy, and associate with the people or objects of our attachments. As long as we work to satisfy our wants and needs, as long as we perform actions, those activities will generate results that will have to come back to us in due course. Of course, we may always try to do good, so our future results will not come as painful ones. But yoga doesn't see pleasure as happiness. Pleasure is temporary, and it's not more than a momentary relief of the real problem. And even if we try our best, negative actions and their harsh outcome are inevitable. This dichotomy of pleasure, pain, action, reaction perpetuates the work of the desires and the bond to karmic results. Therefore, liberation would mean emancipation from the ties of karma, to free ourselves from karmic results, both negative and positive, the painful as well as the pleasant. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna understands this point, and he comes up with the idea to stop his engagement in the war and all of his political and administrative duties, retreat to live in the forest, do nothing, and by this he thinks effectively stop karma. But Krishna tells him this: Nahi kaschid kshanam api jatu tishthati akarma krit krayatehi avasha karma sarva prakriti jairgunaihi. Everyone is bound to act helplessly according to the modes of nature. Therefore, no one can stop acting even for a moment. Krishna says that not performing work is not the complete picture. The verse reveals to us that the motor of our actions are the gunas. What is performed on the physical plane is the culminating expression of mental activity, namely thoughts and desires. Without this power of will that acts upon our psyche, a corresponding action wouldn't take place. Yes, you may be sitting alone in a cave or even in prison with your hands cuffed, but it does not free you from thoughts and from desires. You will still be attracted to objects, to ideas. You will be entertained as well as irritated by your own senses and mental activity. Because the very cause of our existence is the movement of the gunas. As an ego, an I thought, we appropriate mental and physical activity to ourselves. When we perceive through our senses a segregated reality, we believe that we are a subject maneuvering in a world of objects and practicing our will and make our own decisions. But in the refined reality, we're only modulations of prana. Therefore, Krishna recommends the practice of karma yoga and tells Arjuna that the only way to really stop doing is not to be the source of the action. Yat karoshi yat ashnasi yat juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kunteya tat kurushva mad arpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerity that you perform, do it, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. How the law of karma works. Every activity generates a corresponding reaction that returns to the source. We free ourselves from karmic results when we stop being the source of the action. For example, the state law. As a civilian, if I know of another person transgresses the law, it is not my position to personally confront them. It is not my authority to investigate the case or to take that individual to jail. Instead, as a citizen, my duty is to report to the law enforcement. And the police too, they don't decide whether that person is guilty or not. They only serve the court with the evidence, and the court serves the state with justice. If I am a vigilante, taking it upon myself to punish the offender, I will be liable too. Whereas by calling the police, I take the most responsible action, while I remain uninvolved. And the officers too, they remain uninvolved. They are fulfilling their duty on behalf of the government, because the real source of the act is the state law. When Krishna says, "Do everything as an offering to me," it is the highest dharma, the highest form of dharma that leads to liberation. We are invited to stop pursuing egocentric ideas and goals and consciously adapt ourselves to standards inspired by divine revelation. Krishna says, you are not the owner of the actions and not of the results, not of the sacrifice and not of the reward. Claiming agency of the body and the senses and taking the fruits of the work is like a fraud. You have to identify the owner and return him his property. And this identification is the key. It will free you from being subjected to desire and karma. Instead of condemning efforts to satisfy the senses, Vedanta focuses on a deep understanding of the nature of desires. It does not suggest a blind and ignorant repression of desires, but a liberation from constantly pursuing them. The problem is not whether we can satisfy our desires or not, but the unceasing hunger of the mind. The rich don't have fewer desires than the poor owing to their ability to satisfy more of them, while the content of their craving is different, the experience is similar. Yoga and its vast array of branches and paths is very much concerned with the problem of illusion. Illusion about our eternal identity, the material existence, being subjected to physical body, being managed by a mind, having desires, attachments, and the constant obsession with pleasure, all those, in fact, cause us suffering only as much as we think it to be real. And we think it happens to us. Therefore, the path of yoga is devising ways to clear out the illusion, get sober. Only the knowledge of the self will free us from this conditioning. The egoic phenomenon is the basis and foundation of all dissatisfaction. Therefore, we can say that the unqualified original desire is the desire to be complete and get rid of the feeling of limitation. This is the desire from which every other desire originates. Our original identity is pure consciousness, Sat Chit Ananda, ultimate existence, awareness, and bliss. This identity is expressed or reflected in the core of our desires, our need for happiness, our fear of death, and our intolerance of limitation. If this was not our nature, we wouldn't bother being oppressed, limited, and mortal. And what happens to us when we feel so limited? Frustration comes when an autocratic regime oppresses the people. The citizens are not happy. They want to revolt or escape to freedom. When the shoes are too tight, it hurts. At the end of the day, we come home and first thing we take them off. Remove the cause of the pain. Free our toes. Similarly, this restriction on the level of consciousness is painful. It's unnatural to us. We are certainly uncomfortable with this localized sense of self. And our desires are this reverberation from the depths of our origin. We know we should be happy. We know we should be free. No one needs to tell it to us. No one needs to make the salt salty. And you can't make it saltier by adding salt. The search for happiness and freedom is not a cultural thing. It's not a social norm. It doesn't have to be taught or indoctrinated. It is inherent in us. We are made of it. This is the expression of our need to go back to our original state. Liberation is union with Brahman. Prabhuji emphasizes that true liberation is never an escape. If we want to be free from something, this is a reaction to limitation, which means that freedom is validated by it. This is a psychological freedom that is still related to our mental state, which is part of the illusion. What he calls authentic freedom is one that transcends the illusory separated reality conditioned by circumstances. It is a subjective freedom that cannot be given or taken. This true freedom, he says, is reached through the direct knowledge of reality, or Brahman. Artha is the pursuit of livelihood and security. Kama is the desire for pleasure. Dharma is how things should be and what is their true purpose. Certain attributes are inherent to the subject. The dharma of the salt is saltiness. Of the apple tree is growing apples. Of a car is transporting. These qualities are their essence. If the apple tree doesn't grow beautiful and sweet apples, we assume that something went wrong. Perhaps it didn't have good growing conditions. If the car doesn't drive, we deem it broken, it's useless. If we can't fix it, it goes to the junkyard. Now, what is the highest dharma of human existence? What is its essence that unless this quality manifests in its full potential, it hasn't fulfilled its purpose? Humans possess a high level of self-awareness. Human self-awareness far exceeds that of the animals. Some animals have self-awareness. We see it in the famous mirror test. A few species, when they are put in front of a mirror, they recognize that their reflection is their own and not of another individual. Humans' cognitive faculty is much more developed and complex. They can think and also think about their thoughts. There can be thoughts about how one perceives himself and about how others see him, which means from the dualistic perspective, humans can get as close to the subjectivity as possible, to perceive themselves as themselves. Prabhuji's retroprogressive path would add to it, humans can also be aware that they are aware. If someone is asking, who is Kalimaji? I say, that is me. They ask, are you aware? The question, are you aware, refers to that conscious element at the background of my attention. I reply, yes, I am aware. How do you know that you are aware? Did someone tell that to you? Did someone show you? No, I know it firsthand. The denial of it is an oxymoron. By this awareness, humans can investigate and explore the subjectivity resting as the background of the objective phenomenon. Our senses are put in the service of our mind, and as such, they are projected outward to acquire what we perceive as separate. But when we turn to look at the perception itself, a whole reality is revealed that we overlooked when focusing on object, a reality that is more genuine and it often feels more real. Moksha positively means that we brought light into the room and saw that there is no snake there. It is, and it was before, only a rope. The reality of the snake is dissipated, and there is no question anymore if the snake is venomous, if it bites. It was an illusion. When we become aware of this eternal reality, we transcend the superimposed identity of the ego. This revelation is the union, the liberated state, the full meaning of yoga. I wanted to close this lecture with the words of Prabhuji, so we can reflect on them. A few days ago, I shared with him that I will be speaking about liberation, and I asked if he has something to say about it. He said this: real moksha is to get liberated from the feeling that there is something to let go of. But most important, he said, it is the liberation from the feeling that there is someone who needs to get liberated. Jai Prabhuji.